Hello, my name's Cheryl Reynolds. I'm a senior lecturer in the School of Education and Professional Development at the University of Huddersfield, and I'm really excited to be taking part in this e-learning and digital cultures MOOC. And I think that the first week's activities look really fascinating, very thought-provoking, and have got me thinking about all sorts of different things related to how you set up and run a MOOC, and also to the course content itself, looking at the relationship between technology and society, and I think all of that's fascinating. In particular, I found the Bendito machine video really thought-provoking, and the discussion around that has been fascinating as well. But also, I just thought it would be useful to reflect upon the technological determinism piece by David Chandler, and I think that that raises some really interesting issues. I have looked at some of these issues previously, thought about technological determinism through the work of Raymond Williams on culture and television, and so I found some of those ideas familiar, but some of them were new and challenging, and I was particularly fascinated by this notion of linguistic determinism, and I began to wonder about the nexus between language and technology and how those things operate maybe in conjunction. So this notion that our ability to think certain things is related to language. So, for example, if we have no word for a thing in our language, does it become impossible for us to think it? Or if a word is taken to mean a certain thing, does that influence our response to it? I'm thinking of terms that have a contested meaning, like gender or class. So, for example, the way in which the notion of class developed is that initially we spoke of the working classes as if there were different kinds of people within that particular portion of society, and that they were quite disparate in that they had different kinds of jobs, different places in which they lived. You'd have rural working classes and urban working classes. But then along comes Marx and says, workers of the world unite, and we arrive at a new term which is class, and that gives us a new way of thinking about society and therefore changes us. So I think there's certainly some mileage in that notion of linguistic determinism. And then, as I say, I think that links in to notions of technology and how that works, and there's a nexus between the two. Take, for example, this video, which is my linguistic expression of the ideas that I've been provoked to think about by the first week of the EDC MOOC. And I think what's happening here is that my register is changing because I'm using my iPad to record my thoughts. So rather than formulating them into a blog post that uses text, instead I'm speaking them as they occur to me, and that alters the register and maybe alters the nature of this utterance. If I'd chosen to write it, it would be really rather different. But more than that, if I'm writing a blog post, it's very different, is it not, from writing an assignment or an email or a letter. And so by being in a particular context, when we think, when we formulate, when we utter, when we write or create, it alters the nature of the utterance, I think. Not sure about that, but I think that perhaps it does. So all these really interesting notions, and I can't wait to find out what we're going to be looking at next.